The security desk downstairs still doesn't know my name. The new guy, 22, cheap suit, lanyard clipped too low, glanced at the card in my hand. It was blank except for a barcode and visitor, data audit consultant. Mara had couriered it to my apartment this morning in a plain manila envelope. No return address. Standard protocol. 12th, I said. He waved me through the turnstile without looking up. Elevators to your right. Meridian Global Holdings takes up 3 floors of a glass box on Park Avenue South. 2 years ago, when Tori moved the headquarters back from Jersey after the rebrand, she sent a press release about reclaiming Manhattan's operational gravity. She loves saying shit like that. Operational gravity. I stepped off the elevator onto 12. The double doors to the executive boardroom were cracked open. Someone had left a half-empty tray of La Colombe on the credenza outside, so I grabbed a cup and leaned against the doorframe. Might as well wait. Tori hated it when people were late to her meetings, even the ones she hadn't technically invited me to. So, if the Q3 variance holds, we can force the narrative on the September call. Julian was saying, his voice has this polished, NPR host quality to it. Smooth, condescending by default. But Reeves Capital won't play ball unless we bury the earn-out language. Victoria. You know they'll. Victoria. I muttered under my breath, testing the weight of it. She hates being called Tori in that room. She was standing at the head of the table, marker in hand, hair pulled back, so tight it made her cheekbones look sharper than usual. Julian was at her right shoulder. 3 VPs, ops and legal, plus 2 guys from IR I didn't recognize. She spotted me over Julian's arm. Her expression didn't change. Just a micro shift in her eyebrows. The same look she gives a doorman when he forgets to hail a black car in the rain. Ethan, she said, not unkindly, just flat. You're early for the birthday thing. Julian turned, grinned like he'd been waiting for something to land all morning. Oh, hey, Ethan, he said, loud enough to bounce off the glass walls. Did Marissa put you in the breakout room? Front desk usually keeps the temps corralled down there during exec syncs. I'm not, one of the IR guys started, squinting at me. No, it's fine. Julian cut in, leaning a hip against the table. Ethan's just my wife's husband, sort of our resident, consultant on non-executive matters. The ops VP, Carla, snorted into her water. Tori tapped the marker once against a glass tabletop. A little percussion of authority. Julian, she said, not correcting him, not introducing me as anything else. She shifted her weight and addressed the table again. Like I was a slide deck she'd already advanced past. Before we get back into the bridge, let's be real about optics. We got the trust breathing down our necks about overhead. If we can't show a clean EBITDA recovery by October, EBIT I asked. It wasn't loud, but in a silent boardroom. A drop pin sounds like a gavel. Julian laughed, actually threw his head back. Jesus. See? That's why I like having him around. Keeps us humble. Tori finally looked at me directly. Her eyes were tired. She'd been pulling 18-hour days for a week, and I knew for a fact she hadn't eaten since a protein bar at 6 a.m. Ethan, she said, voice pitched for efficiency. Not cruelty, but close enough. You wouldn't know an EBITDA from a grocery receipt. Why don't you take that coffee down to the break room? Marissa can show you the espresso machine if you're bored. Will be another 40. The silence after she said it wasn't awkward for anyone but me, which meant, functionally, it wasn't awkward at all. Carla from Ops stood up, gathering her iPad. I'll walk him out, she offered, almost reflexively, like she was offering to toss a jacket in the closet. I've got legs, I said. I set the paper cup down on the sideboard, didn't drink from it, and nodded once at the table. My gaze caught Julian's. He was still smiling, waiting for me to look embarrassed. Have fun with the bridge, I told them, and pulled the door shut behind me. The birthday thing was for Richard, Tori's father. He sold his remaining equity stake to the trust 3 years ago, right before I signed the papers putting the whole structure in place. He knows exactly who signs the quarterly distributions. He also knows better than to correct his daughter in public. We were supposed to meet at Le Cuckoo at 7. I got back to the apartment in Darien a little after 6. The Subaru was filthy from the parkway, but Tori's Cayenne was already in the drive. Gleaming, she was in the primary closet, half-dressed, talking on speaker to someone from PR. A navy silk blouse was draped over her shoulders. Unbuttoned, she saw me in the mirror and muted the phone. "You went to the office," she said. Statement, not question. Mara dropped the packet off. "I figured I'd save the courier fee and ride up. You told the desk you were a data consultant again? Worked." She turned, reaching for a pair of diamond studs. Her tone softened, the way it does when she's maneuvering around a social debt. "Look, Jules was just being Jules today. Don't take it personally. He likes to posture when the IR boys are in town." "Jules," I repeated. "Don't start." She smiled, brief and distracted. "He's old Harvard. It's a fraternity thing. You know how it is." "I don't." "Actually." She ignored that, stepping into her heels. "My father's in a mood about the merger. He's going to push you about what you do again. Can we just agree you're between contracts tonight?" It's easier than explaining freelance data architecture to a man who thinks LinkedIn is a spam folder. I leaned against the door jamb and watched her button the shirt. The cuffs were French cuff. She fumbled one pin, swore under her breath, and kept going. "What do you think I do? Tori?" She paused, one hand on the cuff. Then she laughed, quick and bright. "God, I don't know. Something with servers? You fixed the Wi-Fi faster than Spectrum. I'll give you that." She crossed the room, grabbed her clutch, and smoothed my collar without breaking stride. "Not affection, muscle memory. Wear the Navy sport coat," she said over her shoulder. "The one your sister got you. Makes you look like you belong in the dining room instead of the coat check." Richard booked the corner banquette. He stood when we approached, kissed Tori on both cheeks, and shook my hand with the grip of a man who owes me 9 figures and will never admit it. "Ethan," Richard said, "too hearty. Good to see you." "Son." "Richard." Julian was already seated, nursing a Negroni. He raised his glass at me. "Ethan, glad you made out of the break room." Tori slid into the booth next to her father, effectively boxing me in across from Julian. The Somme poured champagne. Richard launched into a monologue about the club renovations in Greenwich before pivoting, exactly on schedule, to the business. "The trust rep called me this morning." Richard said, eyes darting between Tori and his wine. "Said some compliance lock hit the Ashcroft Bridge loan. You having trouble pushing it through?" "Victoria? It's a timing issue," Tori said smoothly. "Finance is scrubbing the numbers." Julian tilted his head. "Actually, the hold came from the trustee level. Whoever's managing the blind trust is getting skittish. Maybe they don't love the deal structure." He sipped his drink, then added, almost casually, "Or maybe they don't love the leadership volatility. Hard to tell when you don't know who you report to." Tori's jaw flexed. "We report to the board. Julian, let's not rewrite governance at dinner." "Right, governance." Julian smiled at me across the table. "Hey, Ethan, if you ever run into the mystery man behind the trust, tell him Jules says hurry the hell up. We've got 8 figures riding on his inbox." Richard chuckled, nervous. He wouldn't know the trustee. "Julian, I wouldn't," I said. Tori kicked me lightly under the table, her version of a warning shot. "Ethan was just telling me he's considering taking a longer contract uptown," she said brightly, steering the conversation. "Maybe something steady." "Steady," Julian echoed, tasting the word. "Must be nice." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Encrypted push from the offshore portal. I didn't pull it out. I already knew what it said. Mara had copied me an hour ago. Board resolution drafted. Performance review clause triggered. Awaiting principal sign-off. I looked at Tori. She was laughing at something her father said, one hand wrapped elegantly around the stem of her glass. Completely in her element. Completely convinced the floor beneath her was concrete. "You know," I said, and they all glanced over. "I think I will have something steady soon." Julian smirked. "Yeah, What's the gig? I reached across the table, plucked the linen napkin Tori had set down, and folded it once, setting it beside her plate. Grocery receipts. I said, figured I'd brush up. Tori rolled her eyes, laughing like I was the court jester she'd hired for the evening. She patted my wrist the way you'd pat a dog that learned a new trick. Ignore him. Jules. He's hilarious when he's overtired. Richard signaled for another round. Nobody asked me if I wanted one. I checked the time. 7:42 p.m. Exactly 72 hours before the board meeting where none of them would be laughing. All right, picking up exactly where we left off. Staying clipped, keeping the camera on the dialogue and the power shift. No wasted adjectives. We didn't talk on the ride back to Darien. Tori scrolled her phone, answering emails with one thumb. The cayenne smelled like her perfume and the champagne she barely drank. I drove the Subaru behind her, headlights locked on her brake lights, matching her speed even though the parkway was dead. When we got home, she kicked her heels off in the mudroom and left them there. Uncharacteristic. She usually lines them up. Coffee? She called from the kitchen. Water. She came out holding a glass of San Pellegrino instead. Condensation slick on the outside. Handed it to me without meeting my eyes. You were weird at dinner, she said. I was quiet. There's a difference. She leaned against the island, crossing her arms. You don't usually let Jules get under your skin. But tonight you were performing. What was the grocery receipt thing? I was making a joke. Bullshit, she smiled. But it didn't reach anything. You don't make jokes about the business. You never care about the business. I set the glass down on the counter, without drinking from it. Same thing I did with the coffee cup at the office. Old habit. Maybe I'm developing an interest. I said. Tori laughed, short and dismissive, and pulled her phone out again. A Slack notification lit up her screen. She frowned. Mara Whitlock just pinged legal requesting a full audit trail on the Ashcroft Bridge. She read aloud, mostly to herself. Then, looking at me, who the hell is Mara Whitlock? Data consultant. I said, same as me. She narrowed her eyes. She's not in our vendor matrix. Julian says there's no record of a Whitlock retained by finance. Then Julian needs a better search bar. She stared at me for a beat too long. Something behind her expression faltered. Not suspicion yet. Just a faint itch of a pattern she couldn't name. Don't do this, she said finally, softer. Don't play cryptic, because you're pissed about the break room comment. I said I was sorry about that earlier. You didn't say sorry. You said Jules was being Jules. Okay, fine. She pushed off the island, suddenly tired. I'm sorry. Happy? It was a shitty thing to say in front of Carla. But I cannot have you hovering around the office playing consultant right now. Ethan, we got a trust problem and the CFO is already looking for reasons to brief the board against me. Then maybe you should hear what the board's actually hearing. She blinked. What is that supposed to mean? My phone buzzed against my thigh. Another encrypted ping. This time I did pull it out. Just glanced at the screen. Thumbprint unlocked the message and read Mara's update. Ashcroft Target Company has a $12 million contingent liability buried in a Cayman SPV. Julian's DD missed it. Legal is looping in Victoria at 9 a.m. Tomorrow. Do I freeze the wire? I typed back one word. Freeze. Tori was still watching me. You're doing it again. Doing what? That face. Like you know something everyone else in the room doesn't. I locked the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. Get some sleep. Tori, you got an early call. She knocked on the guest room door at 2 a.m. We don't share a bed. Another clause in the prenup she drafted and I signed without reading. She stood in the doorway in an old NYU sweatshirt, hair down, holding a half-empty bottle of Topo Chico. Can't sleep, she said. Come in. She sat on the edge of the bed, not looking at me. Julian forwarded me an email from the Trust Council. Some bullshit about enhanced data oversight. He's acting like it's a vote of no confidence. He would, if they install a shadow auditor. The street will eat me alive before the September earnings call. I stayed quiet. After a minute, she lay back against the pillows next to me, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, not touching me, not quite asking for comfort, just occupying the space. You ever think about what happens if this whole thing falls apart? She asked. The company? Us. She said it so fast I almost missed it. The arrangement. If I lose Meridian, and you're just here, stuck. I'm not stuck. She turned her head. In the dark, her eyes were glassy. Why do you stay? Seriously, I don't cook. I work until midnight. I introduced you as a temp today, and you still fixed the router last week, and you still drove up here behind me like a bodyguard. What is this for you? I thought about telling her. Thought about reaching over, unlocking the phone, and showing her the trusty dashboard with her name tag to every PL line. Thought about watching her realize the man she'd been sleeping 3 doors down from owned the building, the Pearl, and the leash Julian was currently choking on. Instead, I said, go to sleep, Victoria. She didn't argue, rolled onto her side, facing away, the way she does when she's used to being unanswered. By 8:47 the next morning, the office was in a low-grade riot. I didn't go upstairs. I sat in the building's basement-level contractor lounge, the one Mara had flagged in the floor plan, and dialed into the bridge on my laptop. Audio only. Julian's voice cut through first. Smug, already defensive. So the liability is immaterial. Victoria. It's a legacy note from the target's previous PE sponsor. We can carve it out in side letter. And who found the note? Julian? Tor eyes sounded ice cold. No hangover in her cadence. Because according to the system log, the trustee's office froze the wire at 7:41 last night, for hours before your team even opened the SPV docs. Silence on the line. Then Julian. Scrambling. The new auditor, Whitlock, overstepped. I told you she wasn't vetted. Mara Whitlock. Tor I corrected, pronouncing the name with sudden, deliberate weight. Flagged a $12 million hole that your VP of Finance missed. So maybe stop worrying about who vetted her and start worrying about who vetted you. Someone else chimed in, legal, probably, muffled. Then the line dropped. I closed the lid of the laptop. Mara was waiting when I walked out of the lounge. Black coat, tablet in hand, zero small talk. She fell into step beside me toward the elevators like we were old colleagues. CFO's trying to spin it as a systems error. She said quietly, he's telling the IR guys the trust rep is an algorithm, not a person. Let him. I said, the board observer seat opens Friday. If you want to walk in as the principal, now's the window. I hit the button for the ground floor. Not yet. Mara stopped at the security turnstile, looking back at me over her shoulder. He's going to keep pushing her. Ethan, Julian's already drafting a minority shareholder memo. If he gets 3 VPs to sign, she loses the gavel before the retreat. She won't lose it. Mara arched an eyebrow. You sound very sure for someone who lets his wife introduce him as the help. She introduces me as leverage. I said, stepping through the gate. She just doesn't know which side of the deal she's on yet. Upstairs, Tori was alone in the boardroom, wiping down the glass table with a Clorox wipe. Compulsive. She always cleans up when a meeting goes sideways. She didn't look up when I walked in. Mara Whitlock emailed me personally. Tori said the trustee appreciates my agility on the Ashcroft issue. Who talks like that? Consultants. She tossed the wipe into the trash and finally met my eyes. Something had shifted since last night, small, but permanent, like a hairline fracture in tempered glass. Last night, you called me Victoria, she said. I always call you Victoria. No, you don't. You call me Tori when we're home, and you don't call me anything when we're here. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the champagne and the hotel soap from last night. Why'd you change tonight? I didn't answer. She searched my face, then gave a sharp, disbelieving laugh. You knew about the Cayman note, didn't you? Before the freeze went through, I read a lot of boring PDFs. Bullshit again. She pointed a finger at my chest, not quite touching. You're in this somehow. I don't know how, and I don't know why. But Jules is panicking and the trust is moving, and you're standing here acting like you fix Wi-Fi for fun. She waited, gave me the opening. All I had to do was smile and deflect, same as I had for 26 months. Keep the game alive for another week until the Hudson Valley offsite, where the lights would go out, and I wouldn't have a choice but to show her the terminal. But the look on her face, angry, rattled, alive in a way she never was when she was humiliating me, made the timeline feel slow. Ask me on Friday. I said, Friday, after the offsite, when we're upstate. I picked up the blazer she'd left draped over the back of her chair and handed it to her. Until then, keep calling me whatever makes the room comfortable. She took the blazer. Her fingers brushed mine, and for half a second she didn't pull away. Ethan, she said, voice lower now, almost unsure, if Jules is right, and there really is someone behind the trust pulling strings. She trailed off, couldn't finish the thought. I adjusted the lapel of the blazer for her, the same way I'd fixed her coat after the humiliation yesterday. Only this time, I didn't let go immediately. Don't worry about the string puller. I told her, worry about the wire transfer. Julian rounded the corner then, spotted us standing too close, and froze. Victoria, he said, recovering quickly. Legal wants to revisit the side letter language before COB. Tori didn't even glance at him. She was still looking at me. Tell legal, she said, without turning around, to run it past Mara Whitlock first. Julian's mouth thinned. He looked at me, standing there in a wrinkled button-down, holding his boss's coat. Everything okay in here? Better than okay. Jules, I said, and for the first time since I bought the company, someone in that hallway actually looked a little bit afraid of me. Mara's business card arrived at the apartment via bonded courier on Wednesday, printed on heavy stock. No title, just a phone number and a gov-adjacent domain. I left it on the kitchen island next to Tori's multivitamins. She noticed it Thursday morning while pouring coffee. Mara Whitlock, she read off the card, turning it over. No role, no department, just a cell and an NDA template attached to the email she sent legal yesterday. She set it down carefully. You gave her our home address? She asked for a mailing preference. Tori laughed, but there was no humor in it anymore. It was a sound she makes when a counterparty misses a covenant. Ethan, she CC'd the general counsel on a motion to audit the CFO's discretionary fund. Julian's losing his mind. He says this is a proxy play, that whoever owns a trust is staging a coup and using me as a fig leaf. Sounds like Julian talks a lot for a guy who missed $12 million in offshore debt. She picked up the card again, weighing it like evidence. Who is she to you? Competent. That was the wrong answer. I watched the calculation happen behind her eyes. The pivot from annoyed wife to threatened executive. Don't answer like that, she said. I'm not asking as your roommate. I'm asking as CEO of this company. If there's a shadow audit happening, I need to know whose authority she's operating under. You already got the answer from her office. The trustee. Stop hiding behind the fucking trustee. Her voice snapped up an octave. Then she caught herself, glanced out the window at the driveway. Richard's Mercedes was pulling in for their standing Friday lunch. She lowered her voice. If Jules convinces IR that I can't control my own house counsel, the board pulls the gavel. You get that, right? Jules doesn't convince IR of anything. I said, picking up my keys. Jules is busy. Richard intercepted me on the front steps before I could leave for the city. He'd brought a ham and cheese from a club and looked like he hadn't slept since Tori got the Ashcroft briefing. She's furious, he said by way of a low. Morning. Richard. Ethan, please. He stepped in front of the Subaru's door. You have to call this off. The girl, Whitlock, froze the marketing revolver this morning. Tori thinks it's Julian cooking the books to frame her. Is he? Richard flinched. Partially. He's aggressive. But she's the one who signed the term sheet. If you humiliate her publicly over this, she'll never come back from it. And if she goes, I go. You sold the equity 3 years ago. You don't have a seat at the table anymore. I have a daughter, he said, quieter, and you have a marriage. Don't confuse the two just because you're enjoying the anonymity. I opened the driver's side door, gently enough that he stepped back. Enjoy your lunch with her. I told him, don't mention the trust. She'll know you know. He paled. She already asked me if I'd ever met the principal. I told her no. Good. But Ethan, he called after me as I backed out. Don't wait too long to tell her. She bites when she's cornered. Tori's email hit my inbox at 2:14 p.m. From Victoria Langford Cole to Ethan, Cole at Proton Mail, redacted. Subject, formal notice, internal access. Ethan, effective immediately. I am instructing IT to revoke visitor clearance for any non-retained personnel operating under the Cole Heritage Trust banner, pending a formal board resolution. If Mara Whitlock attempts to access Level 12 again, she will be escorted out by building security. I understand we have a domestic arrangement, but you involving yourself or your contacts in active MA without disclosing conflicts is reckless. Please do not forward me any more compliance literature. Regards, V. Elsie. I read it twice. Forwarded it straight to Mara with one line attached. Revoke CFO override on wire approvals. Route everything to my terminal. Ignore the email. Mara replied in 90 seconds. Done. Julian tried to initiate a $250,000 PR placement to spin the Ashcroft delay. I killed it at 2:16. He's on the phone with IR, now screaming about rogue consultants. Perfect. I didn't go to the office. I work from the Subaru Park 2 blocks off Madison, remote routing the permissions Mara needed. By 6, Tori was blowing up my phone. 3 missed calls. Then a text. We need to talk. Now, the break room thing was a joke. This isn't. I walked in at 6:17. The floor was mostly cleared out. Julian was still camped in the glass wall bullpen outside Tori's office, sleeves rolled, performing exhaustion for anyone walking by. Tori was at her desk, door open, reading something on legal pad. When she saw me, she stood and shut the door. Mara bypassed me. She said, no preamble. She rejected the PR spend. She locked the Ashcroft diligence vault. And 10 minutes ago, she CC'd me on internal memo stating the trustee has full provisional oversight of cash management. Ethan, she's acting like she owns the voting block because she represents the voting block. Stop speaking in riddles. She slammed the legal pad down. Either you know who the beneficiary is, or you're playing some game where you pretend to be small, so you don't have to watch me fail. Which one? Julian chose that exact second to knock and pushed the door open, holding 2 tumblers of scotch he clearly didn't intend to share. Bad time? Julian asked, clocking me standing by the window. Get out, Julian. Tori said, without looking at him. He didn't move, smiled at me instead. Ethan, buddy, you might want to head downstairs. Mars at the front desk demanding badge access for a forensic accountant. Your wife's about to have a very public HR incident. Tori spun on him. I said, get out. Just pointing out the optics. Julian said, leaning into the doorframe. The board's already murmuring. If the CEO can't even control a random data guy wandering the halls and his mystery consultant, I stepped between them, not aggressively. Just enough that Julian had to tilt his chin up to keep eye contact. Walk away from the door. Julian, he blinked, thrown by the lack of a joke in my tone. Excuse me? You heard her. She asked you to leave. Julian looked at Tori, expecting the save. She didn't give it. She was watching me, really watching me. For the first time since the wedding, Julian set the scotch down on the filing cabinet and backed out, smirking to save face. Sure, family squabble. I'll let legal know the lockdown stands until Monday. The second he was gone, Tori locked the door. Not the click of a boss securing a meeting. The slide bolt of someone who didn't want anyone hearing what came next. You just threatened the CFO, she said. I corrected his exit timing. She crossed her arms, rubbing her own elbows like she was cold. Richard called me an hour ago. He slipped, said the trust was older than I thought, and hung up. I stayed quiet. If you're involved in this, she said, voice dropping, if you're profiting off me looking incompetent in front of my own cap table, I'm not profiting. Then what are you doing? For a second, I almost told her. The words were right there. I bought the show before we met. I kept you on purpose. I watched you save it. but the offsite was 3 days away. And I wasn't ready to lose the only dynamic we had where she actually looked at me like I mattered, even if it was just to be angry. I'm making sure you don't sign a deal that buries you, I said. She let out a sharp, disbelieving breath and sank into her chair. The fight went out of her all at once, replaced by something worse, exhaustion and doubt. Julian told me something ugly today, she murmured, not looking at me. He said maybe I only got the CEO title because the trust pitted me, because of my last name, because someone behind the scenes wanted a pretty face to hold the seat warm. She finally lifted her head. Tell me he's wrong. I walked over, pulled the rejected PR, spent memo off her desk, and tore it in half. Julian's wrong about almost everything, I said, except one thing. She stiffened. What? He's right that you're being watched. Her throat worked. She looked young suddenly, stripped of the silk and the Harvard posture. By who? I didn't answer, just picked up the scotch Julian had left behind and poured it into her dead office plant. Don't drink anything he pours, I said. She stood abruptly, swaying slightly on her heels. Ethan, stay tonight, not the guest room. Just stay. I don't want to go home and wonder if my CFO is actively trying to get me fired while my husband plays middleman with the boogeyman. I hesitated. She reached out, curled her fingers around my wrist. The first time she'd initiated contact in months that wasn't performative. Please. Okay, I said. We got back to Darien at 8:45. She changed into leggings and a Meridian Global hoodie, pulled her hair into a messy knot, and cracked a beer she definitely wasn't supposed to mix with her prescriptions. She got 3 drinks in and slumped against me on the sectional, head heavy on my shoulder, mumbling about the Ashcroft terms. Jules says the trustee is some old hedge fund ghost. She mumbled into my shirt. Says he probably wears a monocle and jerks off to SEC filings. I huffed a laugh. Colorful. She shifted, nuzzling deeper into the crook of my arm, eyes fluttering half shut. You know what the worst part is? Tell me. I don't even care about the merger anymore. Her words were thick, slurry at the edges. I just want to know why you're different this week. You're not the guy I married. That guy would have helped Jules carry the tray at the break room. I stroked her hair once. Careful. I was never that guy. Torai. She made a soft noise, almost a purr, and her hand slid down my forearm, fingers threading through mine. Then, without opening her eyes, her grip tightened and she sighed, content, drunk, entirely unaware. Love you, Jules, she whispered. Don't let them vote me out. The air left the room like a vent had blown. She didn't realize it. Passed right out against my chest. Breathing slow, hands still locked in mine, like I was the man she was actually in love with. I sat there for a long time, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of the name she'd just misplaced. Then I eased my arm out from under her, covered her with the throw, and stepped out onto the deck. Pulled up Mara's contact. Me, move the offsite up. Hudson Valley. Day after tomorrow. Mara. The CFO is already scheduled to pitch the no confidence motion Monday. Me, let him. He'll pitch it in a blackout with no Wi-Fi. Make the reservations. I looked back through the glass. Torai was asleep, one leg hanging off the couch, lips parted. Richard was right. She bites when she's cornered. But Julian didn't realize the only thing more dangerous than a corner Victoria Langford Cole is a quiet husband who's already decided what her severance package looks like and thrown it in the shredder. Julian booked a retreat at a converted mill in Hudson Valley, all reclaimed wood and aggressively curated Wi-Fi. He picked it because the cell service dies the second you cross the county line. Smart play. If you don't know, the guy driving the car has root access to the building's backbone. Torai rode up with Carla and legal. I drove myself. Julian tried to text her an hour out saying estate staff says no extra vehicles on the gravel lot. Leave the husband at the Airbnb in town. She forwarded it to me without comment. So I followed the Kian up the drive and parked in the reserved C-suite row anyway. Julian was on the porch smoking a cigar when I got out. Jesus, he muttered, tossing the cigar into the wet bushes. You really don't take a hint, do you? I don't pay for hints. I said, grabbing my duffel. He blinked. What? Nothing. Good weather for a blackout. The main lodge was packed with the 15 people Julian considered his coalition. He'd set the seating chart. So Tori was at the head of the long farm table, and I was tucked near the AV cart, like a vendor waiting on a projector bulb. She didn't correct it. Not yet. We were still pretending. Dinner was a disaster Julian engineered himself. He passed around printed decks, claiming the trustee had gone dormant, and urging the board observers present to provisionally sign the Ashcroft Bridge without waiting for Mara's sign-off. This isn't a coup, Julian said, passing the pen to Carla. It's operational continuity. The trust isn't answering emails. Victoria's stuck. We move without them. Tori looked at the pen like it was a live wire. I'm not signing around a freeze. Jules. Then let the observers initial. He pressed. 1 page. If the trust wakes up Monday, we show them we saved the deal. Across the room, the overhead lights flickered, then died. Someone swore. A few phones clicked on flashlight mode. The generator outside groaned and cut completely. Exactly 4 minutes after I SSH into the mill's smart grid node from the Subaru's hotspot and killed the main. Backup should kick in. Julian snapped, already sweating. Facilities said 5 seconds. Grids down countywide. Carla offered, peering out the window at the Black Valley. Storm rolled and fast. Tori stood, feeling her way along the table. Everyone stay put. We'll reconvene in the morning when we can actually read the goddamn decks. Wait. Julian grabbed a battery lantern and shoved it toward the center. While we have light, just pass the page. Carla, initial it. We lose Ashcroft tonight. We lose the Q4 narrative. A projector fan word to life. Not the main ballroom screen. The pull down in the corner Julian's team hadn't even cabled. It glowed blue, then spat a PDF onto the wall. Live data, pulled straight from the Ashcroft target's Cayman registry. The room went dead quiet. Line items scrolled. Contingent liabilities. Related party transfers dated 2 weeks ago, moving money out of the target and into a holding LLC registered to Julian's brother-in-law in Bermuda. Holy shit. Carla breathed. Julian stepped in front of the beam, throwing a shadow over the numbers. That's doctored. Someone spoofing. It's the KYC feed. Tori said. Her voice was perfectly steady. She was looking at the screen, then at the laptop sitting open on the AV cart. My laptop. I was crouched by the Ethernet drop, phone tethered, finishing the pull. EBIT the bridge. I said, mostly to myself. Typing. Grocery math. Julian turned on me, lantern shaking. You did this. You hacked the presentation. I pulled the registry. I corrected. Standing up. Your brother-in-law's SPV is the reason the trustee locked the wire. Julian, not Mara, not me playing games. You structured a kickback into a bridge loan and tried to strong-arm the CEO into initialing it in the dark. Tori moved, fast, shouldered past Julian, and came straight to me, close enough that only I could hear her over the rain hammering the tin roof. How? She said, barely audible. How do you have direct terminal access to the target's offshore KYC? I closed the laptop. I told you I read PDFs. Ethan, she grabbed my wrist, harder than last night, nails biting in. Stop talking like a consultant, and tell me who the fuck you are in this building. Julian was still shouting behind her, demanding someone call building security, demanding the projector be unplugged. Tori didn't even turn around. Shut up, Julian. He froze. Excuse me? I said, shut up. She never took her eyes off me. You tried to bury a self-dealing transfer. You lied to IR, and you spent the last month convincing my husband he was a temp. So stand down before I let him show you exactly what kind of IT guy he is. Julian laughed, high and brittle. Your husband? Tori, he's a glorified freelancer you picked up in a leave, she said. The whole lodge heard that one. Julian's mouth worked. You can't. Carla, Tori cut in. Still not looking at Julian. Walk him to the guest house. Tell him his laptop and his brother-in-law's paperwork will be couriered to the SEC by morning if he sets foot in this lodge again. Carla didn't hesitate. She took Julian by the elbow and steered him out. He went without a fight, because even in the dark, even humiliated, he knew better than to argue with the tone she was using. We ended up on the covered porch, just the two of us, rain blowing in sideways, her sitting on the railing with her arms wrapped around her knees. "You ruined him," she said after a long silence. "Saved you. Don't split hairs." She nudged my boot with her bare foot. She'd kicked the heels off again somewhere between the table and the dark. The trustee froze a wire. "Mara speaks like she works for you. You just pulled an international forensic audit in a blackout using a hotspot and a Lenovo MacBook," I said. She actually smiled. Small, stunned. "Of course." Silence again. The kind that isn't hostile, just recalibrating. "When we got married," she said slowly, "you told me you were between things. I assumed you meant you'd washed out of some startup and didn't want to admit it. I didn't lie. You omitted a continent." She dropped her knees, slid off the railing, and stood toe-to-toe with me. The lantern light from inside striped her face in gold. "Are you the trust? Actually the trust?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Wet hair, bare feet, no title, no audience. "No," I said, "I own the trust." The sentence landed heavier than the rain. She didn't scream, didn't laugh, just inhaled through her nose. Slow, like she was bracing for a hit. 3 years, she whispered. "You bought Meridian 3 years ago. 2 months before our first date. Actually, before our date?" Her voice cracked. "Richard introduced us. My father, he knew. He sold me the majority stake. He thought you were the only one who could turn it." She backed up a step, hitting the porch column. "So this," she gestured between us, "the marriage, the apartment, the Darien driveway, this was a retention package? You married your own CEO to keep the stock price pretty?" "No." "Then what was it?" I stepped into her space again, close enough that she couldn't look away. "I married you because you ordered a martini at the Yale Club and told your dad to go to hell for treating you like a legacy hire. I like that woman. Then I watched you turn into someone who introduced me as a punchline to keep your Harvard boys comfortable." Her throat worked. "I didn't know." "I know." She swallowed hard, looked down at my hand, the one that had been holding the terminal all night, reached out, tentative, and laced her fingers through mine. Sober this time. Intentional. "You're to take it back." "Aren't you?" she asked. "The company, now that Jules is finished, wasn't taking it. Was waiting for you to stop handing the gavel to people who don't deserve it." She squeezed my hand, hard, like she was anchoring herself to a deck in a storm. "Monday morning," she said, voice gaining its edge back, "when we walk into that boardroom." "We," I repeated. She met my eyes. "Don't get cute. If you're the principal, you sit at the table. No more break room. No more Mara doing your dirty work. She's very good at it, though, for the first time in 2 years." Tori laughed like she actually meant it. "Brief, rough, rain-soaked. God, you're insufferable," she muttered. Then, quieter, "Thank you for not letting me sign that page. Anytime." She leaned in, forehead resting against my shoulder for half a breath, then pulled back, wiped her face, and squared her posture like a woman walking into a shareholder vote. "Drive me home," she said. "I want to sleep in my own bed before Julian realizes the SEC tip came from your IP. Subaru or Kian." She glanced at the gravel lot, at my muddy car next to her pristine German one. "Yours," she said. Less Jules energy. Julian beat us to the building. By the time Tori and I got off the elevator Monday morning, he'd already stacked a reception area with 3 minority shareholders and a crisis PR consultant named Bex who charges $800 an hour to look concerned. "Victoria," Julian said, intercepting us before the turnstile. He didn't even glance at me. "We need to push the 10 a.m. to executive only. I've drafted a special resolution." I saw the draft. Tori cut in, sailing past him toward the glass doors. Mara forwarded it to legal at 6 a.m. Cute framing. Julian fell into step behind us, raising his voice just enough for the shareholders to hear. The resolution calls for a provisional CEO transition pending an independent review of the trustees' conduct. Given the unauthorized data breach at the retreat this weekend, the board observers agree it's prudent. Tori stopped, turned. Mara Whitlock is the trustee's authorized agent, she said evenly, and the data wasn't breached. Julian, you just weren't invited to the folder. I have the proxies, Julian said, jaw tight. Section 4B of the bylaws allows a minority bloc to force a confidence vote if the CEO is demonstrably compromised. Then call it, I said. Both of them looked at me. Julian recovered first, smirking. Relax, pal. You can watch from the lounge. We'll let you know when the adults are done scrubbing the cap table. Tori didn't correct him. Not yet. She just touched the small of my back, subtle, deliberate, and pushed through into the boardroom. Put it on the agenda, she told legal. 10:15, confidence vote. Full slate. Mara was already at the far end of the room, tablet in hand, unbothered by the three VPs shooting her dirty looks. She slid a single printed motion across the glass to Tori as the observers took their seats. Tori read it, then slid it to me. Cole Heritage Trust reserves the right to veto any removal of Victoria Langford Cole without principal sign-off. Motion proceed with a vote is noted, but non-binding. Non-binding? Julian barked from the opposite end of the table. That's not how New York corporate law works. The trust is a silent vehicle. The trust, Mara interrupted, is a majority shareholder. Would you like me to recite the Class A supervoting rights filed with Delaware Chancery? Or shall we skip to the part where you would draw the motion? Julian ignored her, addressing the observers. Gentlemen, this is exactly the opacity we're talking about. The CEO is being shielded by a phantom entity that refuses to identify itself. If she won't produce the principal, I'm right here, Tori said. Julian blinked. You're producing yourself now? I'm telling you the principal is in the room. The table went dead quiet. Julian laughed, short and incredulous. Bullshit. Who? You? Her. I said, standing from the side chair I'd been perched in. I didn't raise my voice, just leaned forward and tapped the glass once. Same rhythm Tori uses when she's done with a meeting. Julian stared at me like I'd spoken in a dead language. Him? Julian turned to the observers, spreading his hands. He's a house guest. He's literally the guy I asked facilities to clear out of the break room last week. You're seriously telling me the blind trust that owns 61% of Meridian is... What? Married to her? Mara cleared her throat. Mr. Cole is the sole beneficiary of Cole Heritage Trust, which acquired the Langford Estates equity position in 2023. He has requested observer status under his legal name effective this morning. Julian's face flushed a deep, ugly red. He looked at Tori, hunting for the angle. You knew he owned the trust, and you let me build the Ashcroft deck? You let me walk into a blackout and get blindsided. I didn't know until Saturday night. Tori said, cold, no apology in it. And honestly, you need a conspiracy to keep your hands off a $12 million kickback. Jules, just a basic ethics clause. Julian shoved his chair back, so hard it rolled into the credenza. This is a sham. A husband and wife sideshow to consolidate power before the Q3 call. I will take this to the Times before I let a temp. Say it again. I said. He froze. Call me a temp one more time. I said, pulling the folded blazer Tori told me to wear off the back of my chair and laying it over the backrest. See what happens to your brother-in-law's subpoena timeline. Julian opened his mouth, closed it, sat down. Mara didn't miss a beat. She passed the final document to the board's secretary, per the principal's instruction. She recited, the no confidence motion is denied. Additionally, the CFO's trading windows are frozen pending an internal review, and his corporate Amex is deactivated as of... She checked her watch from minutes ago. Julian stood again, gathering his deck like it weighed something. Victoria, you're going to regret letting him play dress up with your company. Tori didn't look at him. She looked at me. I already did, she said. Julian left, slammed the door so hard the blinds rattled. The observers filed out in silence. avoiding eye contact with either of us. Mara stayed just long enough to hand me a flash drive. Nod. CFO's assistant is already packing his boxes, she said to Tori. Compliance will have him escorted before lunch. Thanks, Mara, Tori said. Mara dipped her chin and vanished through the side door. We were alone. Tori sat back in the leather chair, kicked her heels off under the table, and rubbed her temples. You're really him, she said quietly. Yeah, the offshore trust, the buyout, the reason my father stopped calling me a disappointment. I walked around to her side of the table, leaned against the edge. Your father never called you that. He did. At Christmas, 2022, said I didn't have the stomach to run a public company. She dropped her hands, looked up at me. So you bought it to prove him wrong? I bought it because it was underwater and I saw an arbitrage play. You were the upside nobody priced. She let out a long, uneven breath and stood, stepping into my space. Not angry now. Something else, wary, exposed, a little awed. You let me humiliate you, she said. In this room, in front of Carla. You could have stopped it with one sentence. I wanted to see if you'd stop it yourself. And when I didn't, I waited until you needed the truth more than you needed the ego. She reached out, smoothed the lapel of the blazer I was wearing. The same thrift store navy one she told me put on for Richard's birthday weeks ago. God, she muttered, half laughing, half wrecked. You manipulated me into falling for you twice. I didn't manipulate anything. You just stopped assuming I was stupid. She held my gaze for a long beat, then reached into her bag and pulled out a slim manila folder, slid across the glass. What's this? A draft. She swallowed. New prenup. My counsel roughed it Sunday night. I struck the paper marriage clause, added a joint signatory carve-out for the trust, and changed your listed title in the internal directory from visitor to principal. I flipped it open. She'd handwritten a sticky note on the cover. No more break rooms. Also, you owe me dinner that isn't catering. I looked back up. She was biting her lip, braced for rejection the way she used to brace for a Julian interruption. Sign it, I said, and then tear up the one where you call me a temp. I burned that one in the fireplace at the mill. She admitted, Saturday night, after you went to bed. I huffed a laugh, picked up the pen she'd left uncapped, and scratched my name across the signature block without reading the rest of the terms. She watched the ink dry, then blew out a breath like a woman who just closed a 9-figure merger and didn't care about the money. Principal Cole, she said, testing the weight of it. How do you feel about sitting through an earnings prep with me? I have a feeling Julian left the Q3 deck a mess. I'll suffer through it, I said, if you make the coffee. Deal. She turned for the door, then paused, looking back over her shoulder. All CEO again, but warmer at the edges. And Ethan? Yeah, next time you decide to own my entire life, maybe mention it before I introduce you as a help at my father's birthday. I grinned. Where's the fun in that? She flipped me off, perfectly, and walked out to go tell HR that Julian Reeves no longer existed. She didn't come home Tuesday, or Wednesday. By Thursday, Meridian's internal chat was lighting up because Victoria Langford Cole had locked her office door and wasn't returning Mara's calendar invites. I found the envelope on my windshield when I left the Subaru in the building garage Friday morning. Cream stock, her personal stationery, the one Richard bought her when she made partner at her old firm. No email, no Slack. She'd gone analog. Inside was a typed letter addressed to the board of managers. Cole Heritage Trust. Resignation. Effective end of day. I took the elevator up to 12. Her assistant, Marissa, tried to block me with a tight smile. She said no visitors. Mr. Cole, then I'm not a visitor. I pushed the glass door open without knocking. Tori was at her desk, sleeves rolled, staring at nothing. No muck-up, hair in a claw clip. The resignation hard copy was already in an inter-office envelope marked board secretary. She didn't look up when I walked in. I meant what I said about the prenup. She said, sign it, file it, keep the company. I'm done. You're not done. I am. She finally met my eyes. They were raw, You let me marry you knowing you own the company I was killing myself to save. You let me beg you for Wi-Fi passwords while I was answering to your offshore shell. You let me think I was failing in front of my own CFO, so you could swoop in at a corporate retreat and play hero. That's not a partnership. Ethan, that's a long con with a ring. I set the envelope down on her desk. Didn't open it. You didn't fail. I said, you tripled the margin in 18 months. Ashcroft was the only deal that slipped, and that was Julian. Not you. Doesn't matter. She stood, restless, pacing the width of the glass. If I stay now, every win I ever get is because of you. Every miss is because I was too arrogant to notice my own husband was the boss. I can't operate inside that. She reached for the envelope to seal it. I put my hand over hers, stopping her. Not forceful, just there. Then don't operate inside it alone. I said. She laughed. Bitter. Right. Joint signatories. Page 3 of the new agreement. Very generous. I didn't bring the new agreement. I pulled a folded document out of my jacket. The original prenup, the one she drafted in 2023. The one that said nominal marriage. No shared assets. No interference. I tore it straight down the middle and dropped the halves in her trash can. She stared at the garbage. What are you doing? Getting rid of the only thing you ever used to remind yourself I wasn't real. I reached into my inner pocket and laid a different folder on the desk. Thinner, cleaner. I bought the shell before we met. I said, intended to flip it. Then I watched you negotiate the Langford earnout like it was a matter of personal honor. I kept the trust quiet because I wanted to know if you were good, or if you were just Richard's daughter with a Harvard MBA. You proved it in April when you ate the Q1 miss on the call instead of blaming supply chain. Her throat worked. You watched the earnings call? I watched all of them. She sank back into the chair, gripping the arms. So what now? You fire me and make Mara CEO? Mara doesn't want it. She quoted me a retainer to stay 3 more quarters and then go back to teach at Georgetown. Then sell it. I don't want to sell it. Then what? Ethan? I pushed the new folder toward her. Not a prenup. A corporate org chart. Title at the top. Co-Chief Executive Officers, Meridian Global Holdings. Her name. My name. Side by side. Rebrand the top. I said, you run product and capital markets. I handle the trust structure, the board, and the shitheads like Julian before they get near your desk. We do it out in the open. No more invisible husband. She picked up the org chart like it might burn her. Read it twice. You dilute your own voting control. To do that, already file the amendment. She set the paper down carefully, like it was fragile. Then she stood, stepped around the desk, and got right in my face, close enough that I could see the pulse jumping at her throat. You are so profoundly annoying, she said, voice shaking. You let me call you a temp. You let Jules humiliate you. You made me fall in love with you while I thought you were underemployed and harmless. She stopped, realized what she'd said. Neither of us breathed for a second. Finish it, I said. She looked away, jaw tight, then back again. Don't make me say it while you're holding a corporate restructuring form. I reached out, caught her chin with 2 fingers, and tilted her face back toward me. Say it. She closed her eyes. I love you, not the trust, not the title. You, the guy who fixed the router and didn't laugh when I cried about the Ashcroft terms in a barn. Okay, I said. Okay, I love you too. Even when you introduced me as a punchline to Carla. She let out a ragged sound, half sob, half laugh, and dropped her forehead against my chest. Stayed there for a long moment, fingers twisted in the front of my shirt. Then she stepped back, wiped under her eyes with the heel of her hand, and pulled the resignation letter out of the interoffice envelope, tore into quarters, and dropped it on top of the prenup scraps. One condition, she said. Name it. You wear a suit on Q3 earnings. Not a blazer from 2019. Not a thrift store relic. A proper Tom Ford, or I walk. Done. And no more offshore shell games without looping me in. Done. And if Julian talks to the press, I already looped Mara in. I said, he signed an NDA when he took the CFO offer. Mara drafted it. I signed it. You just didn't know I was a trustee initialing the margins. She pointed a finger at me. Stop making that sound hot. It's deeply unethical. Noted. By 4 o'clock. The building knew. Marissa updated the Slack directory without being asked. My title populated as principal/co-CEO. No fanfare. No all hands email. Just a quiet sync across the systems. Julian was walked out an hour later by a junior paralegal who looked like she was enjoying it. He didn't make eye contact with the glass walls as he passed. At 5, Tori and I left together. She insisted on driving Kian. I followed in the Subaru, same as always, just to irritate her. We met at a dive bar in Gramercy neither of us had ever been to. No reservation list. No reps. No observers. She ordered a martini. I took a club soda. She kicked her heels off under the high top and rested her calf against mine. Richard called her halfway through the drink. She put him on speaker. Julian's lawyering up. Richard said, breathless, he's telling the street you were forced out. Dad. Tori cut in. Save it. Ethan and I co-signed a new charter this afternoon. The trust isn't blind anymore. Neither am I. Richard went quiet. You're staying? I am staying. And the two of you? She looked across the table at me, glass in hand, entirely composed for the first time in 2 years. Turns out, she said to her father, he runs the building. I just work here. She hung up before Richard could answer. The bartender dropped the check between us. Tori reached for it automatically, then pulled her hand back with a small, private smile and nudged it toward me. Your company, she said. You pay. I tossed 2 20s on the wood. Grocery receipt rule still applies? She slid off the stool, grabbed her shoes by the straps, and leaned down to murmur in my ear, so only I could hear it. Grocery receipt rule is dead. Cosio, welcome to the job. Outside, it was raining again. She didn't flag a car, just walked to the Subaru, climbed in without waiting for the door, and waited for me to unlock the passenger side. When I got in, she was already pulling up the Ashcroft replacement target on her phone. Mara sent comps. She said, all business now. We buy the smaller firm in Boston. Announce it Monday. You do the opener. I do the growth metrics. Sound like a plan. She reached over, laced her fingers through mine, and hit send on the email to legal before I could even read the term sheet. For the first time since I bought the company, I didn't check my encrypted portal when my phone buzzed.